Chidanandji, you can start right now. You can start right now, sir.
Namaste and good evening, friends. We have gathered for yet another exchange of thoughts. The role of somebody like me is basically to set the ball rolling by sharing some thoughts on the topic chosen. And there is no need to say none of us is an authority on any of these topics. We are at best doing some loud thinking. The topic this evening is inquiry and inner peace. Inquiry is trying to find the true nature of things. When we inquire, we examine the perception. For example, we may perceive something as good. Upon inquiring, quite possibly, what we thought was good may not be all that good. What we thought of as fair may not be all that fair. And mind you, inquiry is not restricted to within us. In certain circles, self-inquiry has assumed excessive importance, whereas we are carefully avoiding the word self and using the word inquiry alone, or to do justice to the significance of the word inquiry. It involves examining things outside, things in people, things in objects, things in places, things in phenomena, things in the behavior of people and things. So, once more, let me make it clear. Inquiry is examining outside and inside. Obviously and naturally, following such inquiry, falsehood takes to its heels. Falsehood leaves us, for it's only when we do not examine something that the false gains ground, strikes roots. And this is so outside and inside. Somebody impresses with his dress, with his language, with his mannerisms. But we inquire further. And inquiry doesn't mean some kind of police inquiry where we suspect the person to be at fault or any such thing. We don't know. We don't know whether somebody is at fault or somebody is utterly innocent. We inquire for the sake of truth. We inquire with the purpose of doing justice to the work on hand. As I said, the first impression can be good at times of some people. I was once at the interview panel to choose a physics teacher for Rajgarh Besant School. And there was a young man looking very handsome, and he had some good degrees, MSc and whatnot. And what is more, he had taken part in some international conferences. He showed some certificates where he had presented a paper, and he actually went to Paris and read out that paper on some advanced topic of physics. But thank God, myself and a couple of others on the interview panel had some physics backgrounds. Otherwise, we would have been really floored by his biodata or profile or CV. After being very impressed, each of us asked him some simple basic questions, and he did not answer them properly. We asked him some definitions. What is potential difference? What is current? What is the difference between volts and watts? And he was not at all precise in his answers. And we thank the stars. If we had appointed him for a month or two, students would have suffered and we would have sent him home after or before even a month would get over. So apparently with some money with him and with some family support, he was able to go to Paris and he would read some international journals, copy, paste and present a paper. We don't need that kind of glittering show. We needed somebody who would make the basics clear for our high school students. So that interview proved to be a form of inquiry. We examined whether the candidate really had basic knowledge of physics. So is the case with character. So is the case with many other facets of somebody's behavior and about ourselves too. Friends, you will surely agree with me if I say, in our life, we get fooled by others and we get fooled by ourselves too sometimes. What do I mean by getting fooled by ourselves? Our own mind sometimes says to us, you are such a noble person, you are such a virtuous person, you are such a wonderful person. There are hardly anybody like you, at least in this part of the world, and so on. It's like certain emperor who thought he was perfect. And let me not tell you the whole story. I'm sure all of you know that story. He was so convinced or sure that he could never go wrong. But one day the ministers wanted to teach him a lesson. They made him believe that there was some extremely fine silk that has come and they had made a dress for him. They even pretended as though they were making him wear it, etc. In reality, he didn't wear any dress at all. In his delusion, in his confusion, in his unhindered, unrestrained self-praise, he believed that he wore some very special silk dress, which was most expensive. The whole dress could have been put into a small box, but the ministers let him or made him believe that it was a wonderful dress that covered him very well. And he walked into the court naked. Though this may not actually happen, the story all the same, very well known in Western and Eastern circles, the emperor's new clothes. Google it up if you haven't heard this. The emperor's new clothes. The emperor walks into his royal court utterly naked. Most people hold back their laughter, but one or two could not hold back. They just laughed. Then he inquired, to use the word of the evening. The emperor inquired, why are some people laughing? I am wearing the most expensive dress which has come from some Turkey or somewhere. And then he found out the truth, that in reality, he was naked. Likewise, inquiry makes us or helps us see the truth of things about individuals, about governments, about huge organizations. The truth of China, the truth of United States, the truth of Russia, and truth of our own India. Everywhere, inquiry has scope. But we are here this evening to examine what connection inquiry has with inner peace. And I would say it has much to do with inner peace. For it is in falsehood that there is at best a semblance of peace, but things are in disharmony, things are in chaos, things are in utter disorder. Therefore, when we inquire, the disorder gets exposed. Disorder in the way we live, the way we talk, the way we behave, gets exposed only through honest inquiry. We need to examine. No wonder Socrates, before he drank the cup of poison and breathed his last, the great speech he delivered. It's easily 15 years or 20 years since I read it the last time. The speech is called the Apology or an Apology. So in that speech called the Apology, one of the most quoted statements of Socrates is, an unexamined life is not worth living. An unexamined life. Where he used the word unexamined, we can take the liberty of substituting a life not inquired into. A life not inquired into is not worth living, for we are fooling ourselves. We are living in self-deception in the so-called material world and in the so-called spiritual world too. It is not unlikely that we are in some kind of self-deception. Both ways. Sometimes we may imagine that we are most virtuous. We may not be. Some other time we may be imagining that we are such sinners. We are a burden on the earth. We are a nuisance to everybody around us. Oh, I'm fed up of myself. I want to end my life. And such suicidal thoughts come to us at times. That could be another self-deception. The truth might be we are neither saints or illumined people, nor are we sinners or wretched people. We have our strengths, we have our shortcomings. And as Krishnaji often said, the whole life is a movement in learning. So once more, what has it got to do with inner peace? Yes, when we see, when we expose ourselves, we realize, oh my God, I have been holding on to something false. My food habit is not right. My habits of way of speaking are not right. My ways of rising and going to bed have a problem with it. My way of handling my employees, my way of handling my own family members is not right. So we examine, and coming to know the discordant notes in our life is a major step. It is half the battle won. If we have now really found out where we are erring, we can definitely set ourselves right. Though sometimes it is said, seeing the false itself puts an end to the false. That has certain truth, but probably the matter is not as easy as it seems. There may be some work to be done. Though when it is said, seeing the false is complete in itself. Seeing itself is action. One of the famous statements of Krishnaji, Jai Krishnamurti. Seeing is action. A lot of people have a bit of difficulty with that statement. Maybe in this session itself, Harshad ji or some of you, my friends, can try to throw some light on it, or it can be taken up as another topic. Seeing itself is action. Ordinarily, people tend to think you see and then appropriate action has to be taken to eventually solve that problem. I both admire that statement, seeing is action, and believe that there may be some implied meanings. What I mean by implied meaning is when you see clearly a disorder, a falsehood, something amiss, something ajar, then the so-called action that should follow that seeing will happen invariably. It has to happen. I have heard a wise man once illustrate this in a different way. If you are in a house and for the last few days you are getting some unbearable foul smell in the house, and you wonder where is this smell coming from, you and your husband and your children are all searching outside the house, inside the house, and the ceiling, and the basement. Where is this bad smell coming from? Finally, one of you, maybe your younger daughter, just to fill up the story, discovers, she screams, Appa. Appa in South Indian languages is dad, father. Appa, here is a dead rat behind this cupboard, and a dead rat which is lying there for more than a week is giving out this horrible foul smell. You saw the cause of the foul smell. Now, do you have to refer to some manual? What should be done following seeing the dead rat behind a cupboard which is giving a stink? Taking it up, lifting it and throwing it far away, disposing it in the earliest possible garbage disposal follows seeing it. Even a little child knows that that dirty, foul thing has to be thrown. Probably in somewhat like manner, Krishnaji made that very, very thought-provoking, insightful statement. Seeing is action. If you have seen your own foul behavior, then there is nothing like, no, you have to do some yoga, some pranayama, you have to take this medicine, you have to go for a therapy, you have to go for some cleansing and all this, If those things are a part of the remedy, seeing will automatically make you do it. So let's not go more into that great statement, seeing is action. It's a terrific statement. Seeing is action is one of the outstanding statements of J. Krishnamurti. It can easily be said. In fact, I may suggest at this moment, it occurred to me this afternoon that Harshadji, me, or X or Y could propose a topic in one of the upcoming sessions. 5 statements of Krishnaji that mean a lot to me. They can share their thoughts. 5 or 3, take 3 or 4 or 5 statements and briefly say why those statements mean tremendously to you. It could be an interesting exercise. But at this point, let me say the statement seeing is action is a terrific statement. Coming back, inquiry brings about seeing. Seeing leads to action. And in taking appropriate action, the causes of lack of peace should go. Sometimes when we inquire into the scenarios and situations, before we inquire, we tend to take sides. If it's a conflict between religious groups, typically all of us have some bias. We could be pro-Hindu, pro-Christian, pro-Muslim, pro-Jewish, pro-Arab. They're already a bias. Inquiry eliminates that bias. Inquiry brings us to pursue justice, to pursue fairness without any entrenched bias. Now you may say, sometimes taking such an impartial stand may lead to more chaos. You may be more agonized seeing the wrongs that this side also is doing, that side also is doing, both are at fault, both are burning each other's houses. Earlier, at least you took pride, though it was false pride, that my side, whichever you took as, whichever you considered your side, you and I in India are neither Jewish people nor Arab people. But in a Palestinian conflict, some of us may have great sympathy for the Israeli Jewish people, and some of us may have a great sympathy for the Arabs on the Palestinians. Of false peace we experience when we take a side and then blame the other side left and right. Look, 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 what the Israelis have again done. They've grabbed some more land from Palestinians who are Arabs. These fellows come from various European countries, etc. You could take a stand, and then defending one side and attacking another side gives you a, I don't think it is peace, but some peculiar pleasure you get. In today's hijab controversy, some people derive much happiness, much pleasure, I should say, by criticizing those who say girls should not be permitted to enter schools with hijab. Some other people derive a similar pleasure in saying they should be permitted. It is a fundamental right. It is a constitutional right, and so on. Now, inquiry may not make you pro-Jewish or pro-Muslim or pro-Arab or pro-Hindu. It lifts you to a level where you see human frailties, human weaknesses, how human beings tend to get biased, which doesn't mean that you will put your hands like this and stand at a distance and say, I don't take sides, I just watch. And that is not the way to live. After all, in life, when you support A and oppose B, it doesn't always mean you have taken sides going by some bias. Rather, you could take the side of somebody who is truly innocent and somebody else who is truly offending or exploiting or tormenting somebody. So, inquiry brings you to such a clean heart. Now, a question arises. The so-called clean heart, does it ensure peace? It's an interesting question, really. I would imagine, and please correct me later on in your interactions, but I would imagine that when we are freed from all bias or prejudice, when we are freed from all preconceived notions, there may be a certain pain looking at the suffering of some people, looking at somebody else who is going about with might. Might is right, as the saying goes. But that pain, that agony is one thing, but peace can coexist with that agony. For to have a heart which is free of bias itself can bless us with inner peace. Just as on the physical level, sometimes we get injured The simplest example is you pick up a child with great love, a little baby, 1 year old. You pick up maybe your own grandchild. And as it happens sometimes, that 1 year old baby slaps you on the side, cheek, quite heavily. It burns. But even though your cheek is burning with the big slap that the child gave, your love for that child is your own daughter's first baby. Makes you, even as you are suffering that pain and the burning sensation, it makes you smile and you happily say to your daughter, your boy or your little girl has gathered so much strength. So it's a coexistence of outer suffering but inner happiness. Likewise, a mind that is cleansed of hatred, avarice, it is cleansed of bias, prejudice, revenge, a mind that is cleansed of some preconceived agendas, etc., is surely capable of experiencing a serenity within. And then on this level of action, what best can be done will be done. You will do. In this sense, I would say, rather than deriving false pleasure, pleasure is always false, from positions which are taken with some bias. Through inquiry, we can come upon a cleansed heart, and a certain silence then reigns supreme within us. Thus, I would state that inquiry, in summary, freeing us from all delusion and illusion, bias and prejudice, and so on, can bestow inner peace upon us. Thank you. Over to others who will share their thoughts, and we can have some interaction too.
Harshad Parekh sir, would you please like to say something?
Okay, are you able to hear?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Please carry on.
Yeah. Thank you, Swamiji. You have said that inquiry is very, very important. And what we generally understand by inquiry is like having a dialogue either with people or within oneself. And probably that leads to some clarity, this inquiry. And then it leads to inner peace and action. My background is little bit different than this because I did not inquire like the way Krishnaji is doing with many people, with David Bohm and Populji. What I did, that I read a book of Krishnaji and he was asking many questions. And those questions, I found it very interesting. And so I began to look within myself. And then I began to learn by looking. So I did not discuss with people. I did not ask questions, but the questions were already asked by Krishnaji, like a question like, what is the cause of sorrow? From where do all our problems come, like fear or anger or jealousy? And Krishnaji was saying that all our psychological problems, they come from thinking. And then from thinking comes the sense of I or me, and then there's a duality between thinker, that is, which is produced by thinking, and thought. So in Krishnaji's words, the duality between the thinker and thought is the source of all our psychological problems. And this, I found it very new, something whether I can look within myself, whether what Krishnaji says is true or false. So I used to sit alone and with great alertness and curiosity to watch the beginning of a thought, because everything is coming from thinking, all our problems. So when I really try to do with my whole energy, attention, curiosity, I felt that there was nothing coming to my mind, and yet there was this sense of looking without thinking was there. And then it, I said, I felt that what Krishnaji says is true. So if we want to really go right to the root of all our problems, like having no peace or having no happiness or love or creativity, we have to look within ourselves without trying to having a dialogue with somebody, but really, are we interested in having a peaceful mind, a very clear mind, and living with love and happiness? What we see generally around us, that people are very, very busy from morning to evening. Either they are working and their mind is very, very busy, and then they get tired, and then they come home, watch some news or films, and then go to sleep. And then what has happened during the daytime and what is seen in the films and news, mostly it is violence and sex and all that. That will go on in our mind, whatever has we have fed our mind with, that will keep on coming. And so even we may not get rest at night, and in the sleep, all that thing will go on, what we have experienced during the day. So people who are really interested in peace, there are many ways one can live. It's like, I remember Kabir, he said, बोए बीज बबुल का आम कहाँ से खाए? It means if you plant a seed of babul tree, a mango will not come on that tree. So if we want a real peace, real clarity, there are certain things which Swamiji also said, that some yoga, pranayam, getting up early in the morning, looking at the sunrise, sunset, walking in nature, listening to peaceful music, and having a right habit, eating habits, sleeping habits, exercises, keeping the body healthy, and then having a good thoughts. And there are some techniques also, like Thich Nathan. He was a Buddhist scholar, and he used to ring a bell, and the sound will reverberate for a long time. And so people move with that sound, and in that there is some peace is generated by some techniques like that, or even doing breathing consciously. That also makes our mind very peaceful. And then these are the basic initial things, but most important thing is to watch what is going on within our minds. And so many things going on, as if there is no peace, one thought after another thought. There is no discontinuity. And many people say that apart from thinking, there is nothing. But I think, I feel that apart from thinking, there is something else within us which has not been awakened. And Krishnaji calls it choiceless awareness or intelligence. And that may come when our mind begins to settle down, become very quiet, and then we can even begin to see the beginning of a thought. That means the mind becomes very silent, alert, awake, and then looking at thoughts from a different dimension than thinking. And such looking, which Krishnaji was always asking, how do you look at a tree, or how do you look at your friend or your wife or your boss? And in that, he was suggesting that there is a different way of looking, which is not thinking, which is not based on the past knowledge. And when such a thing really happens, then we really feel that, yes, such a thing exists. Before we did not know that such a thing exists. But when we begin to look at a tree or a people, not looking at as whether they are Hindu or Muslim or Christian, by looking at their beard or turban, but really looking at the essence of a human being. And then we can have real relationship. And I began to learn about this way of looking by reading Krishnamurti books, by looking within how thoughts are arising. Then something began to change in my body and brain. Then I began to look the way Krishnaji is talking about. And then I open up to people of many different religion and nationalities. And before that, I was thinking of myself as a Indian and Hindu and not able to communicate with people of other nationalities and religion. But after this different way of looking, I lived with people, whether they were Muslims or Christians, or they were of different nationality, Mexican or African or Canadian or American. I lived with all that. And so from my personal way of looking, I feel that Krishnaji is right, that there is this dimension exists within us, which can look at everything, even our thoughts, and even if anger is coming within us, we can look at it. And when we look, that anger goes away. And that is what this seeing is action. It can be verified within us when we are able to see it, because it cannot be verified by thinking. It has to come from the direct perception of our own self and also how we look at the things around us. Okay, I want to tell you a few days ago, I was walking on the main road in this city, and while I was walking, one security guard who was sitting outside a building, he called me and he began to talk. Because few other times he had also talked with me, and he found that I was the person to whom he can talk. So I did not mind listening to him. And he had nothing to do in his job, only to sit outside and see that nobody enters the building or the shop. But his mind was working too much and he was creating many problems. And he told me that he wanted to go and sleep on the railway tracks and let the train pass over and everything will be over. All that unhappiness, peace, restlessness, everything will go by committing suicide. He had all the time actually to look at the source of how these thoughts, unnecessary thoughts were coming. He had all the time, but his mind was too much occupied with the problem, so he was not able to do it. So I told him, just relax, look everything outside, inside, and everything will be all right. Of course, I cannot talk with him about the philosophy, and I had to go. So, but this is what is happening in the world. People are committing suicides, husband and wife killing each other, father and son, father and daughter. Too many problems. We read in the newspaper, watch on TV. But if we want to really learn about ourselves, we need to find some time to be alone, sit quietly under the sky, like I do it on the terrace, look at the stars, and think about how much space around us, and the time is infinite. Our life is very short, and we are very, very tiny thing in the universe. And why do we create so many problems for ourselves? So there is possibility, if a person is really curious, to go to the source from where problems arise and sit quietly, maybe initially pranayam and some technique like ringing a bell and moving with the sound, all that may help. But ultimately, it has to do with the self-knowledge, what is happening within us, and whether we can see clearly. Even when we are angry, can we see that the anger is coming and not living in the illusion? Okay, I have said enough. Thank you very much.
Anybody whomsoever wanted to ask question or make comment, welcome by raising hand. Dinesh Waghmare, please come forward.
Are you able to listen to me, sir?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Sir, I would like to directly come to the subject. I would like to ask, what is the structure of peace? What is it? Is it a silence? Quietness? No violence? No disturbance? No noise? No chattering of mind? Is it relaxation? What is it? Is it no movement of mind? Is it emotion or a feeling? If feeling, can feeling be permanent? can it remain with pleasure, happiness, and joy? So, can peace be a subject of inquiry? What is its relation to awareness? Passion. And what is its relation to bliss? There is another word, bliss. So these are the main questions which we should address. Harshad sir.
Okay. Swamiji, would you like to answer?
After you do.
Okay. Yes, this question about self and awareness, it interests me very much because this word self is used by Krishnamurti in one way and Raman Maharshi and the tradition in a different way. In the tradition, they use the word true self. And that, in my view, this true self in the tradition is equivalent to choiceless awareness, which is not thinking. And the word self used by Krishnamurti is the entity which is coming from thinking. So thinking and awareness, they are completely in a different dimension. I would consider thinking is like a plane, two-dimensional plane in which exist thoughts and feelings. And awareness is the third dimension above this plane of thinking and feeling. And that awareness can see clearly what these thoughts and feelings are doing. And such awareness is what Krishnamurti called intelligence or choiceless awareness of looking. And in that looking, there can be a pleasure or pain or happiness or silence or a music or whatever. Everything is unfolding in that state of awareness, thinking, feeling, sound, senses are operating. So this is what I like to say. And Swamiji can say something.
I think Dineshji specifically asked about how we define peace. Peace is absence of a sense of being torn apart. When we are in conflict, we swing between self-acceptance and self-rejection. Part of us says you are okay, part of us says you are not okay. Part of us says you are right, part of us says you are wrong. You made a mistake, oh no, you are okay. So it's not mental chatter of a general nature, but a mental chatter of the specific nature of self-acceptance versus self-rejection. Peace is when that oscillation, when that swinging, when that rejecting ourselves one moment and next moment saying, I think I did not do wrong. That kind of mental chatter comes to an end, and it is not exactly bliss. Bliss is a more strong, powerful word. Peace is alert state of absence of conflict. That's what I would like to share, though finally it's, no words are enough to really indicate what peace is.
Is it disharmony, sir?
Absence of disharmony is peace. In one's eyes, there may be disharmony in the eyes of others, but in your own eyes, like Socrates, even as he was drinking poison, I would believe was at peace. maybe the city, Athens or whichever city where that happened, that went into riot maybe. That led to probably groups fighting with each other later. Maybe people who were great admirers of Socrates were up in arms against the government, which caused Socrates to die by taking poison. So there was perhaps tremendous disharmony in the city of Athens or whichever other city in Greece where Socrates was asked to die taking poison. But Socrates was free from any disharmony. In fact, the last sentence in his speech was something like, I don't remember the exact words. He said, "We do not know whether people should pity me for taking poison and going, or I should pity them." He made that statement and then took the poison. So he was free of disharmony. Therefore, to your specific question, is it disharmony or absence of it? I would say it is absence of disharmony as perceived by one's own heart. That's my 2 cents. I have no authority on any of these.
So can it be subject of inquiry?
Yes. Whole life is subject of inquiry. My anger, my lust, my greed, my regret, my revenge, all sorts of psychological disorder is subject of inquiry, and peace itself is not the subject. Peace is the fragrance that emanates when inquiry does away with disharmony. Disharmony is the subject of inquiry.
May I
So
say
it is
something?
one sort of
Yeah,
thing.
over to Harshadji.
Yeah. Swamiji used the word conflict, and the conflict happens when there is a duality. Duality between me and you, or thinker and thought in Krishnaji's words. So such duality is the cause of restlessness. The more intellectual a person is, more questions, more answers. Instead of looking at the question itself, people keep on asking, answering, again asking, answering. So once we had a dialogue with Populji, and it was about the nature of inquiry. And I asked her whether it is necessary to ask questions and get answers in this kind of inquiry. Then she asked me, "What do you think?" So I said, this asking question is like throwing a stone in a lake which is perfectly still, and when you throw the stone, it creates ripples, and then looking at that ripples and finding answers. So she asked me, is the lake, that means your mind, is always like that, very, very silent? Then I said, the question comes when the mind is not silent. So what I am trying to say is that when we inquire into anything, what is the state from which this inquiry happens? Because if the mind is not very clean, very peaceful, then whatever it inquires into, it will just add on more words to it instead of looking non-verbally. So in my view, this non-verbal looking at what is happening is what I call inquiry, means seeing. That means inquiry and seeing, they are the same thing. And that is the action. So, okay, I have finished. Thank you.
Sir, can I change a question to can a mind be remain always peaceful?
Can the mind remain
Always peaceful?
peaceful?
And is it desired?
No, it may not be, but it can see that it is not peaceful. And so it will, if it wants peace, it will sit quietly, do some pranayam, something, or just lying down and just looking at itself. So only looking exists in this state. And whatever is coming, it's seen.
So it is another feature of mind, just like greed, anger, and other things. Similarly, it also becomes automatically a feature of mind. So it is time bound. So there is no point in making issue of peace.
Yeah. Yes. You are saying this because it seems to me that you have not been able to look at thinking from a different dimension than thinking, which Krishnaji calls choiceless awareness. Otherwise, you will not
Anand,
say this. Yeah. Anandji. Yes.
Anand Ramagoud, please ask. Anand sir, please come forward and ask. Anand sir, please unmute and
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So when we talk about peace, sir, how to understand? I mean, this world is dynamic. It's changing from moment to moment. Things are happening. So when I say I have to be peaceful, how does one understand this in this ever-changing world with so many conflicts and contradictions, pain, suffering, and all that? That's my question.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe I can say that a person who really wants peace can get it in many ways. Only
So the moment,
one has to be alone. One has to direct the attention inward and very attentive. So that is why Krishnaji says freedom is at the beginning. So if that freedom to look at oneself is not there, then everything is changing. As you say, there is so much unhappiness around us, and we add to it in our life if we are involved into that. So how Krishnaji was able to do that, not only Krishnaji, many people in the world, they are able to find a state of mind where they can really look everything. Okay, I
so
finished.
so the
Shakti, you
moment
want?
you say,
Shakti,
the,
Anand
so the
sir,
moment you say, yeah, the Krishnamurti, I mean, did it. Now, can you see? I'm back to my conditioning, sir. He has done it. I want to do it. And you're talking about freedom. I really don't know what freedom means. I mean, to understand that the freedom or peace or love or affection, compassion, one has to seriously look into it. But the moment I say one wants, I'm back to my conditioning, sir. Whatever I do, I'm back to my conditioning. Can I see that, sir? I may quote Krishnamurti on anybody else. So can I observe my conditioning? When I say I want peace, can I observe the world is dynamic? So what does and everybody wants peace. Everybody wants to run away from the problems. He wants some solutions. Everybody on the earth, every living creature wants pleasure. He doesn't want pain.
Yeah.
So how do I look at it as a Christian?
Yeah.
I don't know Krishnamurti did or not. He may have done it. He may not have done it. I don't know about it. Or any other other great persons, so-called great persons you're talking about. I don't know.
Yeah, right. So only you can do it. Yeah, sir. Sir, Anandji, if you are really interested, you can do it. Anybody can do it. But as I said, sometimes a rat I saw was trying to catch its own tail, and it was a short tail, and it was going round, and it was so much occupied going round and round mechanically that the rat was not aware that people were standing outside and they were laughing at the rat. And then somebody touched the rat, and the rat moved straight and escaped. So that kind of touching needs to happen. And after reading Krishnamurti, if that kind of touching has not happened, then everything is too verbal and it is meaningless. Yeah. Okay. Shakti ji wants to say.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Shakti.
Yes, my voice is reaching, sir.
Yes.
Reaching.
Yeah. You see, the inquiry, for example, Krishnamurti, when I listened to him, he said that there is a different quality of listening. And he was implying that we listen selectively. We usually don't listen. Then the inquiry is to see in one's own life. And one finds that, yes, we are not listening. Most of the time, some self-talk is going on within. So we listen selectively. If it is something which fulfills some sort of, which is very interesting or promising, that we listen, otherwise we don't listen. So then the next step of inquiry is that whether this listening Krishnamurti is talking about is reserved for some people only. Are we doomed to listen this way? Or is it possible in daily life to listen? And then one sees if it is possible to listen. And what happens when one is not listening? What happens when one is listening? So without making any goal, one goes further and further into it, because if I say, yes, Krishnamurti has said it, wonderful, then the inquiry stops. Like Harshad ji, when he read Flight of the Eagle, he sat down and looked at the beginning of thought. That was inquiry. Inquiry doesn't mean only the talk to myself or to that is part of it, because one has to be very clear about certain things. So many people have said so many things. So when we accept without, Krishnaji somewhere has said, if you don't test it out, you have no right to read it. So the testing out is, I think, inquiry. And you see, peace is a very big word, because usually it means absence of agitation. That is the most, superficial meaning of it. And there can be deeper meanings to it. But when Krishnamurti says, can you look at the tree without interference of thought, without interference of name popping up? So in that testing out, if it is possible or not, that non-interference of thought can also be called peace, I think. So peace has different dimensions. And, once I read, it was by chance, I was in a library and in Sarnath, and I saw one sentence written in a book of some Buddhist teacher. And he says, agitation and mindfulness are not incompatible. He was meaning that when there is agitation, still you can be mindful of it, or you can be inattentive to it. So I think when we make peace a goal, that is one way of looking at it. But when we look at peace as clarity, then it becomes one with inquiry. Thank you, sir.
Chidanandji, may I request you to say something? Chidanandji, may I request you to say something?
Yes. I also go with what Shakti ji said. Broadly speaking, peace is a state of no agitations. But going deeper, we understand the causes of agitations are so many. Some people could be agitated because they are not getting proper physical facilities. Some others are agitated because of moral conflicts. Yet others could be agitated because their opinion is not accepted by a few other people. So on physical level, emotional level, moral level, and just the attachment to my belief, my opinion, my position with regard to some issue, etc. And if there is some disagreement with other members of their team, one is agitated. So going deeper and deeper, peace is absence of any kind of self-rejection. But that doesn't mean it is self-acceptance out of self-love. Therefore, it perhaps is better to say the tussle, the swinging between rejection and acceptance stops. One is in alert silence. This is what I may say.
So can I put a question, Swamiji? Can I put a question?
Please do, please do.
When I say peace, and when there's no agitation, but is there a human being when there's no agitation in him is the question. One. Two is, why would I want to inquire? What makes me inquire?
Yeah.
Is the other question, Swami.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, if there is no agitation, if there is no conflict, is there a human being at all? I do look at it as a great possibility. And we are all consciously or unconsciously trying to arrive at that possibility. I think a human being has tremendous potential to rise above the ordinary modes of behavior and experience. Ordinarily, yes. I sometimes myself quote in some of lectures, peace is possible only at the grave. We say, from the cradle to the grave, life is full of turmoil. We make such statements. But at the same time, the very fact that we take part in such dialogues, I think is an expression of our longing for peace while remaining a human being. And what was the second part? I had it in mind.
One was, why do I inquire is one. The other one is
correct.
Peace
that is the second
agitation.
One.
Yeah.
First one is whether one is any more a human being. So why do we inquire? So we inquire for long. We were simply pursuing the glitter and glamour of life. Some of us maybe just food, clothing, and shelter. Some of us wanted respectable, forms of self-gratification. Somebody wanted to become a professor in a university. Somebody wanted to become a very esteemed doctor or engineer or chartered accountant. Somebody wanted to show off one's wealth. So without going for more examples, Generally in our life, to a certain extent, we pursue something outside, becoming somebody. Then we realize, hey, this is a wild goose chase. No matter how much wealth I collect, what position I have, I am not likely to be really happy. Then the inquiry begins. So inquiry, why do we inquire? There is an intuitive grasp of how 100 other things that we have been pursuing is not leading us to where we really want to go. So we inquire smelling something foul, finding something fundamentally wrong with our pursuit of wealth or pleasure or position, etc. Even in a dialogue like this, a part of our mind may try to, pursue acceptance by all the participants. Everybody should appreciate, everybody should applaud, everybody should say, yeah, you said it right. Then another part says, oh, I have had enough of this approval and acceptance. No, I don't want to anymore settle for people's approval, nod, acceptance. What is the truth? So we inquire, what is it we really want? Have I come to this dialogue to get appreciation? That is inquiry. So inquiry, let me say one last sentence, is the result of our tremendous dissatisfaction with the 100 other ways we have been behaving in life, which only gave us some passing pleasure, but not true happiness.
But does life exist without conflict, Dr. Swamiji? When you said there should not be conflict, does life exist without conflict? When K is talking about, he's saying something else, which no other person has said. And then again, when you're talking about what was the other thing, inquiry.
Why do we inquire?
Why do I seriously inquire? I'm talking about me, Swamiji, not the others, or the people known to me. So when do I really begin to inquire? I mean, if somebody says, I read a book and I started inquiring, I want to know what made you inquire that, go into inquiry, serious inquiry, not just superficial inquiry.
I think my own experience
most of
has
these
been,
people that include,
I would say one sentence. I begin to inquire when I let go of certain positions to which I was very attached. If I don't let go of my previous positions to which I have been attached, there is no inquiry. That's just a hogwash. Inquiry begins only when there is a readiness to let go of positions. I have labeled somebody as an enemy, and you say, Swamiji, can we examine whether he is truly your enemy? And if I pretend to be joining you in an exploration, deep inside my heart, if I hold on to the view, come what may, this man is an enemy of mine, then there is no inquiry. The so-called inquiry is just a show. Whereas if I open up, yes, Anand, you are right. I'm ready to double check again whether I should look at that man as an enemy. Then once there is openness, inquiry begins. Then you as a friend may ask me, why do you hate him? Why do you dislike him? I say, you know what? He did this, he said that, etc. Then like a good friend, you say, yeah, he might have said it, but why should you be so agitated about it? Then it is inquiry. When there is a readiness to redefine a person as an example about whom I have held a view.
But if I begin my inquiry with likes and dislikes, am I not back to my conditioning, Swamiji?
Correct. So, true, I think, very right. True inquiry involves enhanced awareness of our likes and dislikes. True. It's like somebody trying to accelerate his car, at the same time pressing the brakes. So you want to go speed up, you have to let go of your foot which is on the brakes. Generally we don't. We want to show that we want to speed up, but we don't let go of the foot on the brakes. It's not easy to inquire, I do agree. Even those of us who are going on talking like this, etc., find in areas where we really are stuck, we are stuck. We are unable to move because we have strong likes and dislikes.
Harshad sir, would you like to say something on this?
Yes. I like
Please
to
go ahead.
say that when we read a paragraph or a page given to us without knowing who has written it, that is very important because it seems that many people who are so much attracted or attached to Krishnamurti, if below the paragraph is written J. Krishnamurti, then they will say, oh, it's very great. But if somebody else name written, some Sadguru or Osho, then they say, no, he is a guru. So we are conditioned by Krishnamurti also to accept whatever Krishnaji is saying and not really finding out for ourselves whether what Krishnamurti says is true or false. And to find out what Krishnamurti is saying is true or false, we have to inquire within ourselves. And if we are confused, then confusion creates more confusion. That is a very logical thing. So there are many people, after reading Krishnamurti, they have become more confused because somewhere Krishnaji says one thing and the other place Krishnaji says something opposite. So which is true. So only we have to read ourselves what is happening. When we become curious to look at our own self and ask question, am I attached to Krishnamurti or am I making more problems for myself by accepting everything what he is saying? So as long as the beginning of the inquiry is not correct, impartial, then it will lead to more and more confusion, more problems, and Krishnamurti cannot help to people. Only we have to see for ourselves. And when we are able to see for ourselves, then we don't ask, is it possible? It is not possible. Those becomes very theoretical questions. Okay, I finished.
So I agree when you say if the bottom of the paragraph K is not mentioned, I mean you may not like it, you may like it, but the question, sir, is not about the others. Whether they understand or they don't understand is not the point. I'm not saying that at all. I mean there are millions and billions of people. How they read and understand is it's not my concern. I would say. I mean I am looking from my end. You know, I mean when now somebody says you are interpreting K, fine. That's his interpretation. But quite a bit of what K is talking about, I stood by that before I came to K. I mean, there are quite a few things. I mean, I don't want to go into the details of what happened, you know, how I looked at things differently. So I do definitely look at things differently from what others are seeing. The other person may agree or not, it's not my concern. What I have understood, or when I read K, I keep telling myself I'm not reading K. I mean, I'm trying to, or when I watch the video, I'm trying to listen to the words. I'm not saying these words are coming from K. Now, whether it's going to make a difference or not, it's a different issue. Whether there's a transformation. Now, again, when we talk about the transformation or the radical change, we're thinking of something else. I already have an idea what it is. It is not that. Can you just listen at that point in time? It's what is essential. Over. If I want anything out of it, I'm back to my conditioning. So when he says to remain with what is, I mean, it is very profound thing. Every time we listen to a video or when we are hearing or when we walk on the street, I mean, my conditioning is playing a role. When I say something dirty, the dirty is a concept which is there in my mind. I say that is dirty. It should not be there. Or something beautiful. I say how beautiful it is. The conditioning is there. It gives me pleasure. So I love to watch that. So can I observe all these things is the question, sir. Whether K said or did not say, it's a different issue. I mean,
Yeah.
or other people may agree with me or disagree with me. It's irrelevant.
Can I ask a question to Mr. Anand?
Sure, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Anand, whether the real inquiry or the serious inquiry comes from your liking, dislike, and conditioning, or from the lack of the your human system or inadequacy of your human system?
I don't know the word what you're using, sir. This is actually is my question. Okay. First and foremost, are you really sensitive human being? That is my question. It's only then the inquiry would begin. When people are dying over there, when things are being damaged, destroyed, so much of violence over there, I don't care. I'm as usual, walking around happily and looking here and looking there. That is what it is. And I say, I want to inquire. That is my question, sir. Are you a sensitive human being? The moment I say yes or no, I'm back to my condition. Over, sir.
Sir, I want to say only one thing. Only the genuine question to oneself creates the inquiry. That is, inquiry is very a subjective thing for oneself, and one has to see this exploration into very deep with oneself only, and he can learn from anything from outside from K, listening to oneself only, listening to Raman Maharshi and listening to oneself only. Then one can go into very deep in oneself and find the nature of his existence itself. Then the inquiry completes itself.
So oneself is a huge challenge, isn't it? So when I see a dead animal over there, I just pass by without, then I mean, that's my conditioning. I mean, I don't see, I see so many dead animals hanging when I go to the market. I mean, people just, don't even look at it. I mean, they don't think about it. That was a living thing just about few hours back.
Okay, Mr. Anand, I just reverse the question. When a superficial inquiry or any inquiry stops, or when you feel that it is fulfilled?
I have not understood your question, sir. I mean, when
I'm
you say
just reversing the
superficial
question.
inquiry or it's
any inquiry in your life, whether it is superficial or of we can say that outer level inquiry, when do you feel that it is I got the answer and I am satisfied?
So the moment you see your child for the first time, you don't say it's a superficial or unsuperficial or anything like that. That love, affection is there. That's all there is. What more do I want?
I am thirsty. See, I am thirsty. I want water. And as soon as I get the water, I feels fulfilled. So from where the answer has come? From where the answer comes?
So you are taking the physical example of taking a thirsty. It is very natural. Every living being goes and drinks water.
Yes, I understand your worry. I took the physical example because
no worry from his end. Tangible, non-tangible, you are not differentiating between them. Tangible things and non-tangible things. You are not differentiating.
Because
in the last dialogue, you were saying 3 is tangible, non-tangible. Just try to understand. When we are talking tangible things, you bring untangible things, non-tangible things. When non-tangible things are discussed, you bring tangible things. So it becomes a bit difficult for somebody else.
Sir, Jain Sahab, either it is tangible or intangible for the other person, but for the oneself who is talking about it, it is very genuine for himself, and he has some tangibility to that.
Modak, you have already said the inquiry is that you test out. If you test out and you find it correct, it is over. It is over.
Right.
But if you are trying to put questions to Anand, already over. 7:30. It is already 7:30. Sorry.
Yes, sir. Yes. Yes, sir.
I
Yes, sir.
leave it here. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
very much.
sir.
Thanks. Sir.
Okay,
Please.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks all.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chidanandji. Thank you, Harshad Parikh, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.